Welcome, friend. Follow me. We're going where nightmares are born. Most people would never dare enter these woods. There's no telling what horrors we'll find, the disturbing terrors we'll uncover. Don't say I didn't warn you. Unsettling creatures lurk here. Be careful, they might follow you out. Or maybe they're already inside you, in the spaces between your thoughts or under your skin. Are you afraid? Good. Now you are ready to enter the Warning Woods. Eric Carlyle stood in the empty room, closed his eyes, and clapped once. He absorbed the flash of sound that returned to him. His trained ears examined every reflection. He prickled at some of the echoing frequencies, repetitions of harmonics that melted into new, unpleasant sounds, but the room still had potential. It was large enough to set up electronic drums and half-stack guitar amps. The hardwood floors provided unique warmth, both visually and audibly. And, best of all, it came with a house he could, just barely, afford. Eric first learned to engineer sound to mix his first band's demos. He went on to play in 3 other bands that all eventually failed, but he practiced the scientific arts of recording and mixing the whole time. Word of his abilities spread throughout the local scene, and soon every local band came to Eric to record their demos, singles, and EPs in the basement of his rental house. As word spread further, Eric decided he needed a more professional and functional space. And in that big room with the hardwood floors, he had found it. With a little acoustic treatment, he knew it could launch him into the next phase of his career. 2 months later, he closed on the house. Friends and a few clients helped him load his things, including his studio gear, into their cars and drove it to his new home. He sent them all away before setting his studio up, wanting silence and solitude in which to think. First, he had to decide where to put his desk. He factored outlet locations, the window, the closet, which he planned on turning into a vocal booth, and the doorway into an equation that equaled the north wall. After a day of unpacking gear, fitting it into place and plugging it in, and a second day hanging acoustic panels on the walls and ceiling, plus bass traps in the corners and sound-dampening rugs on the floor, his studio looked perfect. He'd seen pros on YouTube with uglier spaces. For the first time since going part-time at the restaurant to focus on his music career, he felt legitimate. To make sure he put everything together correctly, Eric turned on his audio interface, plugged in a condenser microphone, and listened through headphones. The typical static hiss of an open mic signal buzzed in both ears, but with something else. His eyebrows pinched together. He pressed record, waited 10 seconds, then said, "Test, test, 1, 2, 3, test," into the microphone. He paused the recording and skipped back to the beginning. Over the gentle static cut a cluster of shrieking harmonics. The tone they created wasn't much louder than the static, but it didn't need to be to cause discomfort to Eric's ears. When he heard himself say, "Test, test," the unwelcome tone stayed on top of his voice without dropping in volume. That meant it would be nearly impossible to edit out. He pressed record again. This time he pointed the microphone at the south corners. He waited, listening for any break or change in the screaming tone that might teach him its origin. An air conditioner running outside? A leaky pipe hissing in the wall? No, this sounded raspier. To his trained ear, the room's screaming tone sounded somewhere in the 3 to 4.5 kilohertz realm. He found it painful to listen to for more than a few seconds. It made him feel ill. Not to mention, it would destroy every recording made in that room if he could not rectify it. He called Katie Hughes, lead singer of Friction Falcons, to tell her he would have to push back her sessions for the band's upcoming EP. She gave him sympathy, but made it crystal clear if he couldn't record her that week, she would have to find another studio, and so would the rest of the band. They had a tight window to record their tracks before a 2-month-long tour opening for Hawthorne Heights. Eric had worked with Friction Falcons from the beginning. He mixed their early demos for free to help himself advertise his new business. Eric had heard some of their new songs live and guessed their next EP, the one he was supposed to record and mix, might be the one to break them through. He wanted his credit on that EP. He wanted his name on the songs that put Friction Falcons on the radio and in playlists everywhere. Out of all of his clients, they were the most likely to pull him out of the local scene and into something bigger. He promised Katie he would be ready for her before the end of the week. The next morning, he walked through the house recording on his phone. He tried to walk quietly and left ample time between movements to capture the unvarnished sound of each room. At his desk, he imported the recording into his digital audio workstation and gave it a little gain to boost the signal going into his headphones. The screaming tone pierced the ambience of every room. In those furthest away from the studio, the tone lost noticeable volume, but it remained ever present. He used an equalizer plug-in to isolate it. Just as he'd suspected, it peaked right at 41 kilohertz. It reminded Eric of a whistling tea kettle, but there was something meatier about it. He didn't quite know what that meant, but the word kept coming to mind. He opened a spectrograph to analyze the signal visually. He could see the screaming tone clearly, an orangish-white line cutting across the screen. He zoomed in to 300% and saw the frequency shifted slightly higher or lower by about 100 hertz at an irregular rate. That ruled out electrical noise, although the fact that his phone, which wasn't plugged into anything, had recorded it could have told him that. Later in the afternoon, still unable to find the culprit, he shut off the electrical breakers one by one. He left a microphone recording in his studio and shouted the number of each breaker as he turned them off, then back on. The breakers must have been mislabeled because at some point, unbeknownst to him, he had cut the power off to his studio, which shut down his computer without saving any of the recording. When he came back in, saw the black screen and dead lights on his interface, and realized he'd just wasted all that time, he kicked an empty moving box into the hallway and screamed. And when the thudding box came to rest, he heard it. Grating, raspy, 4.1 kilohertz. For the first time with his naked ears, he heard the room screaming back at him. He didn't have contact information for the previous owners, but he found their names online through the county assessor's website. The wife, Meredith Foster, appeared to be a local insurance agent according to Facebook. Her husband had little online presence besides a LinkedIn profile that appeared to be inactive since the previous year. Eric called Meredith's office even though it was 6:17 in the evening. The woman who answered, presumably Meredith, sounded tired.
Foster Insurance?
Words escaped Eric. Meredith sighed.
Hello?
Hi, is this Meredith Foster? He asked, forcing a smile to add cheer to his voice.
It is. Who's this?
My name's Eric Carlisle and...
Oh, you again.
Eric paused. Maybe a different Eric Carlisle? I don't think we've ever...
We have. Why don't you leave yourself a note or something?
Eric said. Ma'am, I swear I've never called you.
Just ask what you're gonna ask, Eric.
Okay. I bought your old house and I just moved in and... Look, I know it's weird for me to call you, but I'm hearing this weird noise in the...
Ignore it. Don't... No, I can't. Just ignore it. You taking notes? Ignore it.
See, I can't though because I'm a music producer and I can't...
I know.
Meredith interrupted. How?
Because you've told me roughly 7 times. It sounds like screaming, right? Like a voice screaming in terror?
What? I don't know if I'd say it.
Oh, great, you're not even as far along this time.
Eric's face pinched around his nose. Huh?
Just ignore it,
Meredith restated. The finality in her tone warned Eric he was about to hear her desk phone slam down. He shouted, "If you don't talk to me, I'll come there." Without any change in her voice, Meredith said,
I know you haven't left that house since you moved in, have you? Since anyone who helped you left, you haven't seen another single person, have you?
Eric told her he'd talked to Katie Hughes, lead singer of the up-and-coming Friction Falcons, the day before. Meredith Foster laughed a cruel, heartless laugh.
On the phone doesn't count,
She said.
Try to leave. Step outside for a little while, see what good it does you.
Ma'am, please just tell me what the noise is if you know. I promise I won't sue or whatever if it wasn't in the disclosure. What's making...
I can't tell you.
He barked. Please.
Eric, I can't. I got my family away. I can't risk pissing it off. I can't go through that again. I can't put my family... Can you imagine what it's like to watch your own children die every day? You don't remember while it has you, but you remember when you get... I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, I said too much. I'm sorry. Tell it I'm sorry.
She slammed her phone down. The sound was barely louder than the screaming tone. Even in the kitchen, it could reach him now. He eyed the front door. It was weird, he had to admit, that he hadn't walked through that door since the day he moved in. It didn't seem possible. How had Meredith known? Well, I guess it's about time I got out for a bit. He felt hungry enough to eat a whole pizza, and there was a new deep dish place that opened up a couple of miles away. He could afford an hour to go grab a bite. Could he afford the pizza? Not really, but he'd make it work. He wanted it badly now. The pizza and getting out. Which he craved more? He couldn't say. He grabbed his keys from the kitchen counter and picked up his shoes by the front door. When he knelt to put them on, he doubled over in pain. He clutched his ears. His palms barely muted the shrieking tone. He buried his left ear against his left shoulder and crawled to the door. Kneeling back on his knees, he lifted his hand to the knob. The screaming ceased. Sudden silence can be as shocking as sudden sound. Eric twisted his head around and looked past the kitchen into the hallway lit with a pinkish-orange hue from the setting sun blazing through the windows. Somewhere, up in the ceiling, he heard a thud. His heartbeat, already elevated, washed blood against his eardrums with a pounding rhythm. What was that sound? Had it come from the attic? When the home inspector had looked up there, he told Eric it was unfinished and only good for accessing parts of the ceiling for repairs and such. Eric never bothered going up to look for himself. Part of him wanted to call Katie Hughes and have her come right away while the sound was gone. Without knowing when it could come back, though, he couldn't. He located the scuttle door in his bedroom closet. The home inspector had brought his own ladder. Eric did not own one. He brought a dining room chair into the closet and used it to climb onto a yet unfilled shelf. From there, he pushed into the attic. There wasn't much to see in the light that bloomed around the open scuttle door. Trusses and joists packed with spray insulation, wires traveling to light bulbs and outlets throughout the house. He couldn't see anything that would have made the thud or the absent screaming sound. He raised his phone and turned on its light. As much as he wanted to see something that would explain everything, he had expected to see nothing. The sight of a small chest sitting across two joists filled him with dread. The wooden chest was stained black. Its brass components all looked corroded, and the leather straps binding the lid appeared dry and brittle like overdone jerky. Eric sat on the edge of the scuttle and called Meredith again. She answered faster this time, and he spoke before she could say anything. "You left a chest in the attic."
"It's not mine,"
Meredith said. "Well, it's not mine either, and you left it here. Will you come get it?" Eric asked. Meredith stayed quiet. "Or I could come drop it off at your office," Eric said.
"Will you stop saying that?"
Meredith shouted in whisper.
"If you threaten to come here one more time, I'm blocking your number. You'll never be able to call me again. Trust me, for your own sake, you don't want me to do that."
"Why? You're no help." Meredith growled.
"I've been more help than you could possibly remember, and if you ever want to leave that house again, listen."
She began whispering again.
"Leave that box alone. Leave the house. Burn it down if you have to. You're regressing, Eric. You need to get out now."
"You aren't making any sense."
"I'm saying all I can say. I can't put my family at risk."
"You've mentioned that. I don't get it. How does telling me about an old box put your family at risk?"
"Goodbye, Eric."
She hung up again. In the return of silence, he heard a whisper of the screaming tone. Something inside the chest bumped against it, and the scream cut off. "You don't have to open it," he told himself. He could collect it, take it out to the bin, and finally be rid of the destructive sound. Just in time to book Friction Falcons. It's probably just some old toy or something anyway. He remembered the time his mom buried an electronic catchphrase game deep in a storage bin that got placed in the middle of a stack of bins. Every few hours, Catchphrase's electronic voice would hum through the plastic. "Select the number of players to get started." The batteries died before anyone bothered dismantling the storage room to get the obnoxious game out. He recalled this memory partially to distract himself as he crawled onto the joists. He would need to balance long enough to reach the chest, pick it up, and make his way back without falling through the ceiling. His knees, twice the width of the beams, tried to fall off every time he moved one of his hands. About halfway there, he tried squatting and holding onto the trusses to execute an ape-like clamber that delivered him to the black chest at last. He tipped the chest to test its weight. Something heavy inside thumped against the back of it. He eyed the way back, trying to imagine how he might make it with the chest tucked under one arm. He decided it might be better to keep all of his limbs free and pushed the chest along two joist-like tracks in front of him. He tested it, made sure it would slide, then started making his way back. The second time Eric pushed the chest, one of its corners caught against an imperfection in the wood. One side kept sliding while the other stopped dead, causing one back corner to slide off the joist and tip downward. The heavy object inside slid into the tipping corner and made the whole chest fall. It landed on its back in the dead center of a ceiling panel. The brittle leather straps around the chest snapped. Eric braced himself with a truss and locked his eyes on the fallen chest. The top fell open, and out rolled a donut-shaped grub-like thing about the size of a dinner plate. It appeared to be clutching its own legs with eerily anthropological hands extending from two arms near one end. The bony limbs were fused to each other by its lumpy, damp skin, like it was made of wax and had been left in the humid attic too long. Eric sputtered with laughter. The donut creature seemed to be nothing more than a Halloween prop. The creepy black chest? Another prop, just a decoration. Was all this a sick prank Meredith Foster had plotted with her children? He trained his eyes on the chest, searching for a hidden camera. A mysterious Bluetooth or 5G signal could have invaded his microphone signals and caused the 4.1K screaming. The times he heard it without headphones? Hallucinations. Imprints like the audio tracks of memories. Eric squatted and picked up the grubby donut to find its battery pack and empty it. Its skin felt soft and clammy like the palms of a sick child, and it sagged from his hand as he lifted it. The feeling revolted him. He turned it over and found a face with shiny black eyes, no nose, and an uncannily delighted smile. The eyes and the smile were quivering. Eric stopped laughing. The face looked a bit too real for the shelves of Spirit Halloween. The pasty substance oozing from one corner of its smile looked far too wet. He watched a drop of it slide across the creature's skin and drip to the floor. He yelped and dropped it beside the chest. He stumbled backward. One foot landed squarely in the middle of a ceiling tile. For a fraction of a second, Eric thought he was safe. Then the tile crumbled. His back struck the joist he had been standing on. His other leg pointed straight up. He twisted to grab hold of a joist, but he wasn't fast enough. He screamed until his head hit the floor. The rest of him, his full weight, collapsed on his neck. A pop ran through his entire body before it flopped onto the floor. His legs thudded against his desk chair, sending it spinning until it hit a wall. He couldn't move. None of his muscles would respond. Choking through his kinked neck, Eric heard the screaming tone that had put him there on the floor of what would have been his brand new studio. It filled not only his ears, but his whole head, even the space behind his eyes. 4.1 kilohertz. That's all his pinched throat could produce as he screamed his last breath away. Eric Carlyle stood in the empty room, closed his eyes, and clapped once. He absorbed the flash of sound that returned to him. His trained ear examined every reflection. He prickled at some of the echoing frequencies, repetitions of harmonics that melted into new, unpleasant sounds. But the room still had potential. You made it out. Congratulations. If you enjoyed the story, please rate, like, review, or subscribe. For early, ad-free episodes and behind-the-scenes episodes called Into the Woods, become a patron at patreon.com/thewarningwoods. You can also support the show by purchasing merch. The merch store and Patreon links are in this episode's description. Follow me on Instagram at The Warning Woods to stay up to date. And when you feel ready, meet me here for another journey into the Warning Woods. Thank you for listening.